China impact on gas is amazing. The picture what we have seen in the oil markets, China effect 10 years ago, we are seeing on the natural gas markets now, under the President Xi's motto of making the skies of China blue again. China pushed the natural gas consumption very strongly, and as we speak now, China took over Japan as the largest natural gas importer of the world.
Yes, humankind, when faced challenges, always solve them. We have great ingenuity, and today we have the ingenuity of the man and the ingenuity of the artificial intelligence that is also helping us immensely. That's why it's fundamental that everybody is trying to solve the same issue. So, and that's why we are very glad that in this conversation, this year in particular, some of the barrier came down, and it's not more fossil fuel against renewable or battery against hydrogen or whatever against whatever. It's about we have to do all of those faster and better. And so if we are putting the effort from the oil and gas company as the renewable, the battery manufacturer as the others, together, I believe, I'm a positive on that, that we will be able to solve it. But we have to solve it for the right problem, and the right problem is exactly that. A fast transition at scale is very complicated, and that's why we really need all the brain, and we don't need to fight. We need to all go in the same direction. So I see positive sign there, but it's really the urgency that we have to inject the critical element.
Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Anda sedang menonton Agenda AWANI dan masih tidak terlalu lambat untuk saya terus berbincang tentang Forum Ekonomi Dunia ataupun World Economic Forum yang berlangsung di Davos pada Januari lalu, kerana Davos agenda settingnya, peletakan agendanya untuk sepanjang tahun malah melampaui itu, dan kini kita ada masa untuk menganalisa dan kita tarik keluar beberapa perspektif. Antara perspektif paling utama adalah tentang kelestarian dan juga guna tenaga, dalam bentuk apa tenaga yang kita nak pakai untuk dunia, kerana kita hanya ada satu planet, bumi, dan ini yang saya nak tarik keluar kerana Malaysia kini ada syarikat bertaraf antarabangsa yang hebat yang sedang meningkat naik dengan majunya Serba Dinamik. Orang hebat Serba Dinamik, Datuk Engineer Karim ada bersama dengan saya. Cuma saya nak mula dengan kata-kata yang diberikan dalam temu bual tadi. Mereka melihat kepada contoh negara China misalnya. Barat sentiasa melihat China sebagai kotor guna tenaganya untuk menjanakan kuasa ekonomi. Dia pakai dirty coal, arang batu yang melepaskan banyak karbon dioksida dan sebagainya. Tetapi kalau kita dengar pada kata-kata tadi, negara China pun sudah menstrukturkan semula kebergantungan mereka kepada pelbagai punca tenaga, dan seperti juga Malaysia, mereka ada banyak tenaga lain seperti hidro, antara yang terbesar. Kita tahu di Sarawak pun ada mirip ini dengan bakun. Oleh itu saya ingin terus saja kepada Datuk dalam hal ini, bagaimana Datuk melihat kepada energy mix ataupun macam kalau pizza ada berapa banyak potongan untuk tenaga, kerana sejak sekian lama kita tak banyak mengubah campuran jenis-jenis tenaga ini. Kebergantungan besar, most of the reliance is still on fossil fuel. As a company that has come up very, very fast and very much a darling of the industry sector locally and abroad, even in the stock market, how does Serba Dinamik look at the future of energy utilization for the country? Because what you do, MRO, client servicing and infrastructure building and all this, it would have to gauge where Malaysia wants to be, let's say in 30, 20, 10 years, and then work backwards to your current operation. So we need your wisdom on this, Datuk. You look at not only two sides of South China Sea, but you also look at the multiple layers of the energy sector, Malaysia and globally.
Cik Kim, thank you very much for the preliminary introductions. And the way I look at it is the world is evolving, and technology is also evolving, and issues which are related to the developments of the community and human being is also evolving. So it's rightfully what you have mentioned in the World Economic Forum. You will see that a lot of issues which is related to environment, climate change, and the technology that are going to be adopted so that it can influence those issues that has been mentioned just now has been debated and has been discussed in a very detailed and wide scope. So from my perspective, as a company, we are following these kind of issues because Serba Dinamik as a domestic, as a global entity, need to follow and comply to all these new developments that is going on. So that is why if you look from the energy perspective, we are engaging ourselves in a lot of energy that can minimize or zero-rise the emissions of carbon into the environment. For example, like our engagement into hydropower plant. Is a green technology, and it very much look at the issues of emissions of carbon to the environment. Of course, we are also, at one time, we sponsored this hydrogen vehicle over into the Asia Game in Indonesia, in Surabaya. Okay. There is another commitment that we have put in trying to introduce all this green technology, reducing down the emissions of carbon into the environment. So I would say that as a corporate entity and an entity that looks at commercial or financial returns from all these adoptions of technology, we are also taking that very seriously, so that the investment that we have put in that not just go down the drain, it will return back with the necessary profitability. So how it's going to be, I would say that we need a more specific detailed discussion on that. But in brief, I would say that our engagement into all this technology is not purely to come in compliance to the world requirements, but it's also generating the necessary profitability from the investment that we've put in.
Datuk, I'm not an oil and gas man, but I'm trying with you. Malaysia energy mix is very dependent on coal, more than 50% still. Bahan bakarnya adalah arang batu. And if I look at the figures, gas seems to be the most viable for now. And if we're looking at it, Malaysian gas component in 2018, I think it's about 30 to 35%, and the rest are. When I had the opportunity to go into one discussion in Davos, where Enel Petroleum was there, one of the biggest one from Spain, and then there was one more, America plus Europe, kind of, I think Occidental Petroleum, lady chief executive, very powerful. And there were 5 other people, but as if that discussion doesn't matter, because one was saying that, no, we can continue with the current mix while we find the problem to be solved, the answers. Enel was saying, infrastructure. If we invest in gas as the main, why is it, if the analogy is simple, why do we call it oil and gas when oil is very damaging to environment as compared to gas? Why can't it be gas and oil industry? They were even until that level, Datuk. So I'm just sharing that across. So I'm going to ask your expert opinion on that, because I want to take the argument put forth by the chief executive of Enel Petroleum. Why aren't we leveraging on gas more? Even for Malaysia, we look at it, coal is more than gas. They have been called from MGA for the gas market to be liberalized, for example. But all this would need hindsight and foresight from people like you, because even if we say next year we're going to increase gas to 60%, there's a lot of things involved in the supply chain, the infrastructure and capacity of processing and transporting it. Where is it going to come from? Are we going to reduce our export and use more domestically, or are we going to send our pricier gas outside and buy cheaper gas from somewhere else? So all this, tu belum campur talent kita simpan belakang sikit, Datuk. I just want your input into the energy mix composition as of now. And how do you position Serba? Because what if suddenly a new leadership of government comes in and say, we're going to go gas main and coal. Let's reduce it to less than 20%. How is Serba going to respond to that?
Okay. I believe that technology will be the answer to these questions and also to the different scenario that you have mentioned. And when we talk about technology, it's talking about how this technology play the role to meet the end result that is needed. Because the end results, why all this a change of sources happen. For example, like you mentioned oil, gas, coal, and other things like hydrogen, fuel, energy, is going back to the emissions of the carbon into the environment, because the presence of carbon into the environment is causing quite a lot of damaging effect to the entire world. So back to it, if you look at all these different sources of energy, you name it, coal, of course, is what everybody knows, is very damaging. In a general layman job, word is dirty. But you can see that advancements in technology has come in to involve in the process, so that this release of carbon is not to the environment, is going to be converted into a different medium, so that it will not be exposed or emitted into the environment. The same thing with other sources of energy. So what I'm trying to say here is, as a company, Serba Dinamik, we are observing all these kind of different technology, and we look at the state of situations of the regulatory requirements in respective country. For example, like in Malaysia, the government now is very much encouraging solar technology. It's also looking into wind energy as a source of electricity developments. And then a few other sources like hydrogen fuel cell, which is head spear by the state of Sarawak. And of course other things, hydropower plant and so on. So for us, we will try to synergize all these situations, the state of art of the adoptions of the regulatory requirements of respective country, and our understanding and capabilities on all these different source of energy.
Datuk, let's go for a break. Even oil and gas sometimes have to rest their production capacity for servicing and everything. So once we are back, I put Datuk Karim at the level of Oxy. That's what they call Occidental Petroleum, based out of Houston, the short name. Like Oxy's CEO is Vicky Holub, and Datuk is at that level because Vicky said, not only in Davos, but after that, she's a believer and she leads Oxy that way to capture CO2 release and put them into the supply chain of what Occidental does. And they flood it into their shale wells and other wells so that it helps in their production of oil and gas. But what Enel Petroleum was saying, yes, Enel did that too, and they dumped more than $10 billion into that R&D. The result is not as expected. It's not as efficient as they would want it to be, and it's very, very costly. While the Earth climate is changing, we do not have time. So it seems lucrative, carbon sequestration, using, for example, the old oil well, rather than just leave it. There's a lot of space in it. Take CO2, put it there. But technology and price and practicality, and we only have one planet Earth. And for Malaysia, we're lucky that we have Serba Dinamik leading the thought leadership for us in this field. So let's talk to Datuk again on this matter after the short break. If you're in the oil and gas industry or if I take the leaf out of Davos 2019, gas and oil industry, Oxy Petroleum has been flooding CO2, for example, in the Permian Basin for about 20 years. They now have about 34 CO2 floods, 2,500 miles of CO2 pipeline, and 12 CO2 separation and recycling facilities. And their CEO, lady CEO, is very, very committed to this. But there's a debate that that is not good enough. But at least Oxy is investing and trying to develop the technology. Datuk, you touched on technology just now. So I'm just looking at the countries and the nation's capacity, Malaysia, to pick and choose. So if we pick CO2 sequestration as a field for us to go into, as a pillar of gas and oil and gas, shouldn't the whole country be thinking about it? And we can prepare the talents, we can prepare the supply chain of R&D, we can prepare new entrepreneurs and technopreneurs to go into it. And now with blockchain and supercomputers and AI and big data, we can map where we want to be in this whole cycle. Or, like in the petroleum was debating, it's too much, too expensive and too slow when the earth is already heating up right now.
I see it in this manner. There are two issues here. One issue is the cost involved. The other issues is, I call it as the essence of time. And as organizations, similarly like Serba Dinamik, the factor of time is very important because we have certain KPIs, and the KPIs were always tied up to the sales that we need to achieve annually, and very much it goes back to the profitability, and that profitability will determine whether our investors or shareholders will be happy or not. At the same time, we have this social responsibility to the world, to the community. So I will say that it very much balances up between these two. If the commitment to put it into what you have mentioned, conservations of CO2 and other systems so that it can be contained and it does not emit up to the environment, is something which is affordable by the organizations, then we can go for it. But at the same time, it should not jeopardize the achievements of the KPIs in terms of the profitability that the organization need to achieve.
Correct.
Yeah.
That sometimes fundamental research is very important. If the giants of the Malaysian industry is not helping the government to invest, if America didn't look at shale, they wouldn't be where they are now. Shale investment helped propel their resurgence in the energy market, for example, which disturbed every other market around the world. So what if it's the same thing for Malaysia? If we invest in frontier technology like this, then maybe 5, 10, 15 years down the road, we'll be the world's leading technology provider. Do you agree with that? Or?
Well, I would say that is something which is very easy to elaborate and set, but if we want to put it into actions, there are other factors that we need to take into considerations. But however, the commitment towards the conservations and protections of the world environment is definitely a priority, and it has to be balanced up also with the so-called profitability that I've mentioned just now. But whatever that, we need to table it out and put the chart and see which actions need to be done so they can balance up between these two.
Okay. Dato', I want to take something that Malaysian Gas Association has put out. Their thinking is Malaysia energy mix is going to be less reliant on gas. Something to the point of only 32% by 2026. And technically, remember I'm not an oil and gas man at all, but gas-fired turbines have quick start and ramp up times, more flexibility. And you know this well. So turbines, I remember my first interview with Serba Dinamik, the word turbine is still in my head. Is that the way we should go? Shouldn't the argument at Davos this year that gas should be put to the front? And since we are, I think, the third largest liquefied natural gas producer in the world, maybe there's room to play there with new leadership of the nation, interesting things happening in Sarawak, you know, because any leader of Malaysia would have to address the issue of our positioning, not only for our own energy consumption, but what we supply to the world.
I would again like to emphasize that to eliminate the existing structure of what is going on is something that need to be done carefully, so that it will not jeopardize the current situations. Yeah, I mean, fair enough of what you have mentioned just now. The truth is there, but again, in terms of the phase of the changes and so on, it has to be done transitions so that it does not jeopardize other factors.
But that's good for Serba, right? I mean, there's more things to do.
Yeah, in a way.
Okay.
But again, we have to also admit that all this technology owner, they are spending day and night also into trying to improve and come up with new approach and technology or improvement, so that those elements which are become critical to the society and community are being taken care of.
There's tons more to discuss. As always, never enough time with great people, great company, and in Serba Dinamik, you have a great leader and a great company for Malaysia, Sarawak or otherwise. But this is not the only episode. There will be more episode, banyak lagi episod Agenda Awani bersama Serba Dinamik untuk mengupas kepimpinan fikiran yang dilontarkan di Forum Ekonomi Sedunia Januari lalu, dan kini kita memberikan dia bukan saja konteks Malaysia, tetapi konteks Malaysia kembali kepada dunia. Terima kasih kepada syarikat seperti Serba Dinamik yang kini ada landasan rangkaian seluruh dunia untuk kita bincangkan perkara ini. Jumpa lagi.